Every morning at dawn, just before the sun becomes dangerous, Nathaniel Cross visits a cemetery in Salem, Massachusetts. He's been doing this for 300 years. Every single day without exception since October 31st, 1725. The cemetery is old, one of the oldest in America, dating to 1637. Most of the graves are weathered beyond recognition, names eroded by centuries of rain and wind. But one grave remains pristine, maintained, perfect. Sarah Elizabeth Hartwell. Born March 15, 1702. Died October 31st, 1725. Aged 23. She gave her life so another might live. Nathaniel stands before this gravestone as he has for 300 years. He's 447 years old. He was transformed into a vampire in 1625 at age 25. He's been 25 years old physically for 400 years. Sarah has been dead for 300 years. She died at 23. She will always be 23. Nathaniel kneels before her grave, places fresh flowers, white lilies, her favorite, beside the headstone. The same ritual he's performed 109,500 times over 3 centuries. "Good morning, Sarah," he says quietly, aware of how insane this must look to anyone watching. A young man in his 20s talking to a 300-year-old grave every morning. "I hope you rested well. 300 years today. 300 years since you died saving my life. 300 years since I've been unable to forgive myself." The grave doesn't respond. The dead never do. But Nathaniel talks anyway, as he has every morning for 3 centuries. Because talking to Sarah, even dead Sarah, buried Sarah, gone forever Sarah, is the only thing that makes his existence bearable. "I'm going to tell you our story today," Nathaniel continues, sitting on the ground beside her grave as the first light of dawn touches the horizon. "From beginning to end. How we met. How we fell in love. How you died. How I've spent 300 years visiting your grave every morning because I can't let you go." He looks at her headstone, the carved words he's read 109,500 times. "Maybe if I tell the whole story, I can finally understand why you did it. Why you jumped in front of that stake. Why you sacrificed yourself to save a vampire who didn't deserve saving. Maybe I can finally forgive myself. Probably not. But I have to try." The sun is rising. Nathaniel has perhaps 20 minutes before he needs to leave. 20 minutes to begin telling their story, a story he'll continue tomorrow morning, and the morning after that, and every morning for the next 300 years. Because Nathaniel Cross cannot stop loving Sarah Hartwell, cannot stop mourning her, cannot stop visiting her grave. This is their story. How they met in 1720. How they fell in love despite impossible differences. How she died saving him in 1725. How he spent 300 years unable to forgive himself or move on. A love story. A tragedy. 300 years of grief. "I met you 5 years before you died," Nathaniel begins, speaking to Sarah's grave as dawn light spreads across the cemetery. "June 12, 1720. A Tuesday. I remember everything about that day. Every detail. Vampire memory is perfect. Curse and gift." He pauses, lost in the memory that's as vivid now as it was 305 years ago. "I was 95 years old then, though I looked 25. I'd been a vampire for 95 years. I was in Salem because I'd heard rumors of vampire hunters in the area. I wanted to understand the threat, assess the danger, decide if I needed to leave Massachusetts or if I could safely remain. You were 18 years old, daughter of a blacksmith. Thomas Hartwell, your father. Good man. Hard worker. Widower, your mother died giving birth to you, which is why your father was so protective of you. His only child. His treasure." Nathaniel smiles despite the pain. "I first saw you in the town square. It was evening. I couldn't move freely during daylight hours. You were drawing water from the well, struggling with the bucket because it was heavy and you were small. Only 5 feet 2 inches tall. Slender. Strong but small. I offered to help. You refused initially. Proper young woman in 1720 colonial Massachusetts didn't accept help from strange men. But the bucket really was too heavy. So you finally accepted. I lifted the bucket easily. Vampire strength. You noticed immediately how easily I handled what you'd struggled with. You said, "You're very strong, sir." I said, "I've had practice." You laughed. I'd made you laugh within minutes of meeting you. That should have been my first warning that you'd matter. Nathaniel's voice becomes softer, more pained. We talked for 20 minutes. Just small talk. You told me about your father's blacksmith shop. I told you carefully edited lies about being a traveling merchant. You were intelligent, curious, sharp-witted. You asked questions most people didn't think to ask. What do you trade in? Where are you traveling from? Why Salem? I had to think quickly to maintain my cover story. Before we parted, I asked if I could see you again. You hesitated. You barely knew me. But you agreed. My father's shop is on Market Street. You can visit there if you need blacksmith services. It was a polite way of saying, only in public with my father present. I understood. I visited the next evening. Your father was suspicious of me immediately. Thomas Hartwell was a good judge of character. He sensed something wrong about me. Couldn't identify what, but he knew I wasn't entirely human. He watched me carefully whenever I visited. Made sure we were never alone. Protected you from the stranger who was too interested in his daughter. But you, Sarah, you liked me. I could tell. The way you smiled when I arrived. The way you found excuses to bring your father and me tea so you could linger and talk. The way you looked disappointed when I left each evening. I visited your father's shop 3 times a week for a month. Always in the evening. Always for legitimate business. Purchasing nails, commissioning repairs, asking advice about metalwork. Really, I was there to see you. Nathaniel stands, paces beside Sarah's grave. By July 1720, I was in love with you. Completely. Hopelessly. I'd been alive for 96 years and I'd never felt anything like what I felt for you. You made me remember what it was like to be human. To care about someone else's happiness more than my own existence. But I was a vampire. You were human. I was 96 years old. You were 18. I was immortal. You would age and die. I drank blood to survive. You went to church every Sunday and believed in God and salvation and all the things that would condemn me. I should have left Salem. Should have disappeared before you got more attached. Should have protected you from myself. I didn't. I was selfish. I wanted you in my life. So I stayed. By August 1720, we were courting, Nathaniel continues. Formally. I asked your father's permission. He granted it reluctantly. He still didn't trust me, but he could see you were happy. And Thomas Hartwell wanted you to be happy more than he wanted to be cautious. We courted properly by 1720 standards. Supervised visits. Chaperoned walks. Never alone together. Always in public or with your father present. It was torturous. I wanted to actually talk to you without your father listening. Wanted to know who you really were, not just the proper young woman you presented in public. But I learned things about you anyway. You loved reading, unusual for women in 1720, but your father had taught you. You read the Bible, of course, but also poetry and philosophy when you could find it. You had opinions about theology that would have scandalized your neighbors if they'd known. You questioned things. Thought independently. Didn't just accept what you were told. You wanted to travel someday. See places beyond Salem. You'd never been more than 10 miles from where you were born. You dreamed of seeing Boston, New York, maybe even London someday. You wanted to understand the world beyond your small colonial town. And you were kind. Genuinely kind. You helped neighbors without expecting anything in return. You visited sick people with food your father could barely afford to give away. You treated everyone, wealthy merchants and poor laborers, with the same respect. You saw people as people, not as their social position. Nathaniel's voice breaks slightly. I fell more in love with you every day. And you, Sarah, you fell in love with me too. I could see it. The way you looked at me. The way your face lit up when I arrived. The way you found excuses to touch my hand during our chaperoned walks. In December 1720, I asked you to marry me. I had to. Your father was starting to question why I was courting you for months without proposing. In colonial Massachusetts in 1720, men didn't court women for long periods without either marrying or ending the relationship. I asked your father first. He said yes but looked troubled. He said, Nathaniel, I don't know what you are, but I know you're not entirely what you claim. My daughter loves you. I can see that. So I'll give my blessing. But if you hurt her, if you bring harm to her, I will find a way to destroy you. Whatever you are. He knew. He didn't know the specifics, but he knew I was something other than human. Then I asked you. We were in your father's shop, him working at the forge, us ostensibly sorting through finished nails. I said, Sarah, I love you. Will you marry me? You said yes immediately. Didn't hesitate. Just, yes. Yes, I'll marry you. We married in March 1721. Small ceremony at the church. Your father gave you away. A handful of neighbors attended. The reverend performed the ceremony and looked suspicious when I flinched at the blessing. Crosses and holy words cause vampires physical discomfort, though not the dramatic harm folklore suggests. We lived in a small house I purchased on the edge of Salem. Far enough from town center that we had privacy. Close enough that you could easily visit your father. It was perfect. You were perfect. Nathaniel sits back down beside the grave. Married life was complicated. I had to maintain my human charade constantly. Pretend to sleep at night when I was actually awake. Pretend to eat food that made me sick. Avoid you during daylight hours by claiming I worked during the day. We only spent evenings together. You noticed, of course. You said, it's strange that I never see you during daytime. Are you avoiding the sun? I laughed it off. Said I worked in a warehouse with no windows. Another lie. But the evenings, Sarah, the evenings were beautiful. We'd sit by the fire. You'd read to me. We'd talk about everything and nothing. You'd tell me about your day. I'd tell you carefully edited versions of my travels. We were happy. By 1722, 2 years into our marriage, I knew I had to tell you the truth. The lies were eating at me. And you deserved to know what you'd married. Who I really was. So one night in September 1722, I told you everything. What I was. How old I was. What I needed to survive. I showed you my fangs. Demonstrated my strength. Explained vampirism. You were terrified at first. Understandable. I just revealed that your husband was a monster from folklore. That you'd been sleeping beside a vampire for 18 months. But then, Sarah, you did something I never expected. You accepted it. You said, you're the same person you were yesterday. The same person I married. The same person I love. Vampirism doesn't change that. You're still Nathaniel. Still my husband. Still the man who treats me with kindness and respect and love. Nathaniel's voice fills with wonder, even 3 centuries later. You accepted me. Completely. You asked questions. Lots of questions. How does vampirism work? How do you survive? Do you kill people? Are you immortal? I answered everything honestly. Told you I fed from animals mostly, occasionally from willing humans who I compensated financially, never killed anyone. Told you I was immortal, yes, and you'd age while I didn't. That's when you asked the question that changed everything. Can you transform me? Make me a vampire too? So we can have forever together. I refused immediately. Told you about the transformation risks, the 30% mortality rate, the 3 days of agony, the permanent loss of humanity. I said, Sarah, I love you too much to risk killing you. I'd rather have 30 or 40 years with you as a human than risk losing you trying to give you eternity. You accepted that. But you asked me to promise, if you were ever dying, if something happened and you were going to die anyway, I'd transform you then. Give you a chance at survival even if it meant becoming a vampire. I promised. It was a promise I'd come to regret. By 1723, we'd been married 2 years, Nathaniel continues. You were 21. I still looked 25. People were starting to notice I didn't age. Started asking questions. Why does Nathaniel look exactly the same as when he arrived in Salem? Why does he never attend church? Why does no one ever see him during daylight? The rumors started quietly. Whispers. Speculation. In 1723 colonial Massachusetts, people believed in witchcraft and demons and supernatural evil. They'd had the Salem witch trials only 31 years earlier. They were primed to see danger in anything unusual. By 1724, the whispers became accusations. Someone started a rumor that I was a witch. Others said I'd made a deal with the devil. Your father defended me publicly, said I was a good husband to you, worked hard, harmed no one. But the suspicion grew. Then in March 1725, a traveling vampire hunter arrived in Salem. His name was Ezekiel Crane. He'd been hunting vampires for 20 years. He was good at it. Very good. And he'd heard rumors about a man in Salem who didn't age and was never seen in daylight. Nathaniel's voice becomes darker, more pained. Crane started investigating me, watching our house, following me, talking to neighbors, building evidence. By July 1725, he was convinced I was a vampire. He gathered a group of men, 7 of them, including some of our neighbors, and they started planning to kill me. I knew, of course. Vampire senses are acute. I could hear them plotting, smell their fear and aggression. I told you we needed to leave Salem immediately. That very night. Pack what we could carry and flee. But you refused. You said, "This is my home. My father is here. I'm not running because of superstition and fear. We'll prove them wrong. Show them you're not dangerous." You believed rationality and evidence would win. I knew better. I'd lived through witch panics before. Once people decide you're evil, evidence doesn't matter. Fear overrides reason. But I couldn't force you to leave. You were stubborn. You believed in the goodness of our neighbors. Believed they'd see the truth if we just stayed and proved I was harmless. So we stayed. And it cost you everything. October 31st, 1725. Nathaniel says, his voice barely a whisper now. 300 years ago today. The day you died. The day I've relived every morning for 3 centuries. He closes his eyes, the memory as vivid as if it happened yesterday. It was evening. Almost dark. We were in our house. You were preparing dinner. I was reading by the fire. Your father had visited earlier. He'd warned us that Crane and his men were planning something soon. He begged us to leave. You'd finally agreed. We were going to flee that very night. We were too late. At 7 p.m., they attacked. 8 men. Crane and his hunters. They broke down our door. Charged in with torches and wooden stakes and holy water. You screamed. I stood between you and them. Crane yelled, "That's him. The vampire. Stake him through the heart." 2 men grabbed my arms. I could have broken free easily, vampire strength, but I didn't want to reveal the full extent of what I was. Didn't want to prove their fears right by demonstrating inhuman power. Another man raised a stake. Large wooden stake, sharpened to a point, designed to pierce a vampire's heart. He aimed it at my chest. I saw it coming. Had time to react. Should have broken free, thrown them off, escaped. But I froze. Because if I saved myself, I'd reveal beyond doubt that I was a vampire. They'd hunt me forever. Hunt you as my wife. Your life would never be safe. So I stood there and let him drive that stake toward my heart. Prepared to die. At least you'd be safe if I was gone. Nathaniel's voice breaks completely now. Then you, Sarah, you did something I never anticipated. You moved. Fast. Faster than I'd ever seen you move. You threw yourself between me and the stake. Took it directly in your chest. In your heart. The wood went through you instead of me. Through your heart. Mortal for humans. Mortal for vampires. Mortal for everyone. You died instantly. The stake pierced your heart. You looked at me, our eyes met for 1 second, and I saw you smile. Saw you satisfied that you'd saved me. Then you collapsed. The room went silent. Everyone froze. No one had expected this. They'd come to kill a vampire. Instead, they'd killed an innocent young woman. I caught you as you fell. Held you. Your heart had stopped immediately. Stake through the heart kills instantly. No suffering. Just instant death. You were gone before you hit the floor. I held your body and screamed. Screamed in a way that wasn't human. Vampire grief sounds different from human grief. It's a sound that hurts to hear, that makes people's ears bleed, that shatters glass. I screamed and the windows exploded outward. The men ran. Terrified. They'd confirmed I was a vampire, but they'd also just murdered an innocent woman. They fled into the night. Crane tried to reorganize them, tried to get them to finish me. But they were done. They'd killed someone they knew. Someone who'd never harmed anyone. They couldn't stay and kill again. I was left alone, holding your corpse, looking at your face, peaceful despite the violent death, looking at the stake through your heart, looking at the blood spreading across your dress. Nathaniel opens his eyes, tears streaming down his face. Vampires can cry. I remembered your request. Your made me promise request from 1722. If I'm ever dying, transform me. Give me a chance at survival. And Sarah, I tried. I pulled the stake out, bit my wrist, fed you my blood, performed the transformation ritual. But you were already dead, already gone. Transformation only works if the human is at the edge of death, not beyond it. You were beyond it. The stake had killed you instantly. There was no bringing you back. I sat there holding your corpse all night, trying over and over to transform you, feeding you my blood, begging you to wake up, promising anything if you'd just open your eyes. You never did. You were dead. Truly, permanently dead. Your father found us at dawn, came to check on you after hearing about the attack, found me holding your body, covered in your blood, insane with grief. He didn't attack me, didn't try to kill me, just said, she loved you. She chose to save you. Don't waste that sacrifice. Then he took your body from me, arranged your funeral, buried you in the cemetery. He died 6 months later. Grief, the doctor said. Broken heart. He couldn't survive losing you. I should have left Salem after you died, Nathaniel continues. Should have fled. Started over somewhere else. Let you become a memory. I couldn't. Can't. Haven't. Not in 300 years. I stayed in Salem. Found different places to live as decades passed and my not aging became obvious. But I never left. Because you're buried here. Your grave is here. And I can't leave you. For the first 10 years, I visited your grave every day. Brought flowers. Talked to you. Apologized for not dying instead of you. Begged your forgiveness. Your father's grave is next to yours. He requested that. He's been buried beside you since 1726. By 1750, 25 years after your death, I'd visited your grave 9,125 times. Brought 9,125 bouquets of flowers. Had 9,125 one-sided conversations with your corpse. Other vampires thought I was insane. Maybe I was. Maybe I am. But I couldn't stop. By 1775, 50 years after your death, I'd been mourning longer than you'd been alive. You died at 23. I'd been visiting your grave for 50 years. The grief had outlasted your life by a factor of more than 2. The Revolutionary War happened. I barely noticed. Just kept visiting your grave. Wars don't matter when the person you love has been dead for decades. By 1825, 100 years after your death, I'd visited your grave 36,500 times. Brought 36,500 bouquets. Talked to silence for a century. I should have moved on. Should have found someone else. Should have built a new life. But I couldn't. You died saving me. The least I could do was remember you forever. Nathaniel stands, looks at the lightning sky. By 1925, 200 years after your death, the world had changed completely. Automobiles. Electricity. Telephones. World War I had ended. Everything was different except me. I still looked 25. Still visited your grave every morning. Still loved you. And now it's 2025. 300 years. 300 years since you died saving my worthless life. 300 years of visiting your grave. 109,500 visits. 109,500 bouquets. 300 years of grief. Do you know what I've realized, Sarah? In 300 years of visiting your grave, you didn't save my life. You ended it. When you died, my life ended too. I'm not living. I'm just existing. Going through the motions. Day after day. Century after century. You died at 23. I'm 447. I've spent more than 3/4 of my existence mourning you. The relationship, 5 years of knowing you, 3 years of marriage, has been outlasted by grief by a factor of 100. That's insane. I know it's insane. But I can't stop. The sun is rising. Nathaniel needs to leave. I love you, Sarah. After 300 years. After 3 centuries of you being dead. After 109,500 mornings of talking to your grave. I still love you. I will always love you. You saved my life. I've spent 300 years wishing you hadn't. Wishing I died instead. Wishing that stake had hit me like it was supposed to. But you made your choice. You chose to save me. And I have to live with that choice. Forever. Nathaniel places the white lilies on Sarah's grave. Kisses the headstone like he does every morning. I'll see you tomorrow, my love. Same time. Same grief. Same inability to forgive myself or move on. He leaves the cemetery as the sun touches the horizon. Returns to his home. Spends the day in darkness. Waits for the next dawn when he can return to Sarah's grave and talk to her again. Tomorrow morning at dawn, he'll visit her grave for the 109,501st time. Bring fresh flowers. Talk to silence. Love a woman who's been dead for 300 years. Just like he's done every morning since October 31st, 1725. Just like he'll do every morning for the next 300 years. Because Nathaniel Cross cannot let Sarah Hartwell go. Cannot forgive himself for surviving when she died. Cannot stop loving the woman who sacrificed herself to save him. This is his curse. Not vampirism. Not immortality. But survivor's guilt so profound, so consuming, so absolute that it became his entire existence. Sarah Hartwell died on October 31st, 1725 at age 23, taking a stake meant for her vampire husband. Nathaniel Cross has been visiting her grave every morning since. He will continue visiting for the next 300 years. And the next. Forever. Some loves don't end with death. They just transform into eternal mourning. And Nathaniel Cross will never stop mourning the woman who loved him enough to die for him.